Howdy, hackers. How's it going? I am hiding behind this overlay, but it is me, Rosendo from MLH. So we're starting a little bit earlier. I'm looking at the comment section. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in regarding challenges and Global Hack Week in general. I just wanted to let y'all folks know that you can access all of our challenges or all of the important links for Global Hack Week at ghw.mlh.io. Basically, what's going to happen is from there, you're going to go and navigate over to the Cloud Week portion of the website. So if you wanted to see what that looks like, just go to ghw.mlh.io /cloud /event /cloud, which is what I'm dropping here for y'all. This is a little bit early, obviously. We do have a separate workshop scheduled today. It's going to be something really interesting if y'all are into web browser automation, but I'm happy to take any questions right now regarding anything just generally Global Hack Week related, because I want to make sure everyone here is set up for success. So I do have Lyle's here saying they missed the last one. Where are you supposed to build and submit? If you go over to our challenges page, you will see that each challenge has its own submission link. It's also going to have its own instructions. So be sure to check that out because it's going to be important to actually completing the challenges. There are going to be different types of requirements for each of the challenges. So be sure to, confirm what the challenge is before you actually get started. Most of them ask for a screenshot or a link to a GitHub repository, something to that effect. All right, let's see here. It looks like, oh, hey, how's it going? Hello, virtual AOI. How's it going? Looks like we have some new challenges. When is the last live event for today? If you go to our schedule, ghw.mlh.io /schedule, you will see the last session for day one. Bear in mind that our sessions do overlap within time zones. So day one is what we're considering the largest overlap between the US, Europe, and the Asia Pacific region. So while some of the sessions may run past 12 a.m. EST, 12 p.m. EST, or is it a.m.? At any rate, 12 a.m. EST into the early morning hours on the East Coast of the U.S. Those will be still sessions considered under the day one umbrella. So be sure to check out the schedule because all of the sessions there are clearly outlined. All right. So, without any further ado, once again, my name is Rosendo from MLH. Welcome to Global Hack Week Cloud. So happy to have you. Welcome back if you joined us for opening ceremony or for the previous session with our friends from Vulture. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. For this session, we've got some really interesting stuff in store for you. If you've never heard of Gaffa before, today you are going to learn all about it. Essentially, what it does is it's a web browser automation tool or platform, and you could do a ton of cool things. And I think our friend James from Gaffa is going to show us exactly how to do all of that. So without any further ado, please let me introduce you to James. And yeah, give him a warm round of applause, y'all.
Hey everyone! Thanks for having me here. Great to introduce you to Gaffa and web scraping. So I thought I'd start with telling you a little bit about Gaffa. It's a very early stage product. We've got real businesses planning to use our web automation API to scrape and ingest data into their systems. But it's still like a very small company. So I'm full-time on it, and we have a team of freelancers working on it as well. So early stages, but excited to share the product with you all and go over some demos and show you how it works. And also kind of touch on some kind of introductory areas of web scraping as well for anyone who hasn't done it. Just touching on those areas, and then you can go off and read some more about it if you're interested. So I should say I'm open to questions at any point. I'll keep a lookout for new questions. And I'm happy to answer broader questions as well. So kind of anything to do with the kind of stage of software development you're at. Yeah, so I can address those at the end. So I came to start Gaffa because I was trying to get some web data myself from our website, and basically looking to build a cool little tool, but it took me so long to kind of extract the data from the website because there are a huge number of hurdles in place to do that. And there are lots of great scraping resources, that I found, and there's lots of open source projects you can use. But I always felt that a lot of them were kind of built for scrapers or people who knew about scraping already. And there was a lot of barriers to entry to get the data I needed, especially with kind of scraping protections on websites and things like that. I just wanted access to those sites and so I could build this project. And I didn't want to have to kind of learn all of these different stages and deal with kind of failure rates and scaling as well. So that's where Gaffa came in, with a kind of an interesting view as well, is kind of like the introduction of AI enhanced kind of scraping and browser automation and those kind of things. And I also saw the need for kind of a standardized interface for AI to be able to use the web and use web browsers. So that's kind of enough about the business as a whole. But yeah, the business is really new and the product is in its kind of early stages. So I'm always open to feedback and potential collaboration as well. So if anyone's got some great ideas how to use Gaffa, we're definitely really interested in that as well. So without further ado, what we'll cover today is web scraping and why you'd want to do it. I'm sure many of you have done it already, but it's good to start from the basics. Is web scraping legal? Kind of one of those most common questions probably when people are talking about web scraping. We'll touch on some stuff there and also some practical advice, like what does it actually mean? Why you should use Gaffa, I think, instead of building your own scraper. And then we'll go for a product walkthrough, making your first request using the product, and then some demos into scraping a web page and asking questions about the web page data using AI, and also extracting structured data with Gaffa as well. So you take an unstructured page with information on it and use a large language model inside Gaffa to extract structured data. And then also another practical example, which is scraping images from a site, which is something I had to do for a client recently. And then we'll talk about the MLH challenges we've got for Gaffa, and maybe finish with what you could build with Gaffa as some ideas and a Q&A. So great. So what is web scraping? As I said, it's quite basic, but it's essentially creating an API for the world's largest database, which is the internet. Sadly, not every service has an API. It would be great if they did, but sadly they don't. Companies aren't interested in kind of catering for developers, or they haven't thought about the kind of third-party use cases of their data. So we need to kind of access this data through web scraping. And it's fairly well established basically since the early days of the internet, but it's getting harder and harder every year, essentially. It's very basic. You send a request, you get an HTML page back, you pass that HTML page, and then you store the data in your database and process it and do whatever you need to do with it. So at its very basic level, you can send an HTTP request to a website and get data back. Now, that is kind of increasingly uncommon that you'll actually get an HTML page, or you'll get the data you need. So there's a few reasons why that is the case. One, it's kind of that companies now check if you're using a browser, basically. So if you're using Chrome, then it will return the full page, but some will just block it if it looks like a basic HTTP request. Another thing is that modern JavaScript frameworks kind of don't include all of the data when you request, or they often don't include all the data when you request the page data. So the website needs to load, the JavaScript framework needs to load, and then it requests the data in most cases. So you need to be running a full browser generally to get access to that data. So common tools that I and many scrapers use, with Python, Beautiful Soup is a great one. So once you've got the HTML data, you can then use Beautiful Soup to pass the structure of that HTML and extract the fields you need. And most of the time, traditionally, then you kind of use selectors, so the IDs of buttons or text fields or things, so the CSS IDs to select those and then interact with them or pull the data back. you might have heard of headless browsers. So that's a version of Chrome that doesn't have a GUI that's rendered. So it's kind of software rendered. So it uses less resources than a traditional browser. And you can run it kind of on a server that doesn't have a kind of a screen attached. So that's a really useful tool. And especially as well with wider browser automation in automated testing, they're heavily used as well. And then in order to interact with the browser and perform actions on a web page, you might have used Playwright or Selenium. There's lots of other ones now, but essentially they've just they've started as open source projects, and they essentially kind of hook into the browser's APIs and allow you to kind of write code that performs actions on a web page, like scrolling, clicking, kind of even intercepting the requests the browser makes. So you can kind of capture the traffic and then analyze the traffic before it's sent to the browser, or you can stop the browser receiving that traffic if you want to block it, for example. And then there's also more in-depth scraping tools like Scrapey or CamoFox, which is a kind of scraping browser. So that's a kind of quick rundown through scraping. AI is really changing how scraping works as well. So I mentioned selectors. Selectors are kind of useful for finding elements on a page, but they're quite brittle. So if a site is redesigned, then the selector may change. So if the developer behind the site has decided that they want to rename a button, if anyone has built scripts using Playwright or maybe Beautiful Soup to extract data, and they're using those selectors, then they'll naturally break. So one thing that AI is allowing people to do now is you use a large language model to say, find me this button, find me the search button, for example. And typically they find the CSS selector in the same way a human would, but they do that through the kind of the HTML of the page, or a representation of the HTML of the page, and then they return that. So you can use natural language to find elements on a page, and it can cache that until it's no longer found, and then use an AI to find it again in the future, if that makes sense. So that's going to change the way scraping works, because 20 to 30%, it's quoted, of time spent scraping is spent fixing bugs and issues caused by websites changing how they display the data, normally around selectors and other things. And the other way that AI is changing scraping is that we can take unstructured data on a page that before you would have to pay someone or many people money to kind of sit behind a computer and kind of type copy or kind of type the information and pass it, because it's kind of varied differently between pages, or there's no particular ID you can point to for that particular bit of information on a page. So now AI is really good at finding that information. Obviously, it requires some amount of checking, but in our experience, it's really good at that. And one example we had recently was we were helping a client extract job page data. So they were building their own internal job board using other companies' job boards. So they could basically curate a certain type of job and display that to their customers. And they wanted the salary information. And when we kind of came to them, they were looking through the job post quite manually and trying to extract the salary information and then paste it into a database. So with Gaffa, they were able to use AI to extract the salary information, whether it was in the body of the description or if it was in a sidebar. It didn't really matter. And that worked really well. I'm just going to check if there's any comments for me to address at this stage.
Yeah, James, I could pop these up on screen for you.
Okay.
So this one's from K7. 5932. Does Gaffa handle IP rotations and crawling related URLs of a website intrinsically?
Yes, I'll probably come to that in a sec, but essentially it's kind of a one-stop shop for scraping. So you send a web request, you get data from a website back. You don't have to worry about proxies or IP rotation or any of that. So I really kind of wrapped it in this kind of easy to use layer that handles all that for you.
Awesome. Another one from Van Dread 12. Could we use a prompt for specific HTML tags?
If that's talking about how I was saying about extracting certain HTML tags or certain HTML elements, then I don't have a prompt to hand, but it's definitely quite easy to craft one. The difficulty in this stuff is the context length. So an HTML has a lot of information that's kind of useless if you're trying to find a certain element on the page. So one thing we've done at Gaffa is have some logic behind the scenes that kind of filters that down. So we're sending less to the large language model. It costs less and it makes less mistakes. So that kind of answers the question, but we haven't got prompts to share at the moment.
For sure. This one's a little bit long. It's from Lyles. If a website with study materials got taken down for copyright reasons, but it's still viewable on the Wayback Machine, is it legal to scrape that archive? So, for example, it would be for personal study, data analysis, sharing with others, or commercial use.
Yeah, I'll be coming on to the legality and stuff in the next slide. I can't give you advice whether it's legal or not. I should say that, but lots of people do scrape the Wayback Machine for websites that have been taken down for sure. But one thing that I'll come to is kind of the responsible angle of web scraping, because Wayback Machine is obviously a non-profit. So to scrape it responsibly is important, because they were saying that some of the AI models were scraping their website and kind of putting it under undue, kind of a huge amount of load, which was costing them a lot of money. So that's something bearing in mind. If I move on to the next slide, this is quite relevant to this. So yeah, clients often ask, is web scraping legal? And a lawyer will always respond with, it depends, but on what? So the way I like to think about it is that it's generally accepted that scraping publicly accessible data is legal, and it's really widely utilized. Before kind of getting into the space, I didn't realize quite how many businesses depend on scraping and accessing data that's publicly available online. So that could be from kind of price comparison. Some companies have automated their pricing strategy, so that they automate collecting pricing data from all their competitors, and then end up and update their internal pricing based on those factors. And it kind of creates some kind of weird cycle, because then often their competitors are then scraping them as well. So all of the prices are constantly changing and moving. So the rule of thumb is publicly accessible data. But there's some risky areas to avoid. Personal data, in the sense of kind of social media profiles with personal information on them, that kind of falls into the remit of GDPR. So there has to be some proportionality to what you're doing, and generally avoid scraping data behind logins or copyrighted content. So data behind logins isn't deemed publicly accessible, so you should avoid that. And by signing up to a service to log in, you've technically signed the terms of service. So there's been many examples of lawsuits between companies. LinkedIn has sued a company or multiple companies quite a few times for accessing LinkedIn data. It's lost a few times. I don't know if there's any times where it's won, but they were able to prove that they accessed the data publicly. Another example is Ryanair versus a booking website. I can't remember which one, but Ryanair do not share their flights with kind of booking websites. But the booking website wanted to show Ryanair flights, so they were scraping Ryanair's prices, displaying it on the site, But then when you booked a Ryanair flight on this travel website, they were going ahead and creating an account with Ryanair using a credit card and buying the flight on your behalf. And in that instance, I believe that was deemed to not be acceptable use of those systems. So that's just an example, a quite interesting example. So practical advice, firstly, check if there's an API. It's always easier to use an API. As much as I love web scraping and I'm working on a web scraping product, an API is much easier. So yeah, being a good internet citizen, simply kind of using the site responsibly, don't kind of hammer it with requests, don't create something that doesn't work and then just leave it running and kind of hammer the site, and yeah, avoid personal data or behind a login. And another example, yeah, I touched on in the last question was kind of, yeah, around archives, and yeah, a number of library websites, I think in the US, had to take their sites down or make them not publicly available because too many people were scraping them. So yeah, there is some nuance in the area. So what could you use scraping for? As I said, price comparison, really common. Aggregating news, trading firms use kind of scraping to scrape data that's released by governments about the certain economic data, for example, and ingest it really quickly into their system. Companies scrape websites for leads. So if you're looking for a certain company that buys or handles a certain thing, then you can find them and then extract the data and put it into a sales pipeline. Brands use it to monitor reputation or track product reviews across websites and platforms. And most recently, kind of AI models are training on publicly accessible web data. And also kind of when you do a search using Claude or OpenAI, behind the scenes, often they haven't indexed the whole internet as Google have. So they often use third party, I don't know exactly in these instances, but lots of AI search products use scraping behind the scenes to use Google and scrape the top 10 results and then ingest that into the model, and then it kind of gives you the answers with the sources. So that's another kind of use of scraping that's becoming more and more common. And for students, which might be of interest, yeah, I guess collecting data sets for machine learning or personal projects is a good way to build your portfolio with interesting things that use real live data. I think there's something quite interesting about working with kind of real-time information that you're getting from other places. You learn a lot about how the web works under the hood. So you learn about obviously the HTML and CSS, but then APIs, IP addresses, DNS, and some parts of browser fingerprinting as well, if you want to get into that. And yeah, it's a skill sought after by employers and startups. And it also is kind of an interesting area of problem solving as well. How can I get this working? What can I build with this? So yeah. So I will be getting to some real demos. But yeah, what does Gaffa add? It allows you to manage, to get rid of managing any infrastructure. So if you've written a script using one of the tools I mentioned earlier, and you're running that on a website, you might get to the level where you kind of need multiple of these scripts running at the same time. You might end up with your home internet, which you're using, getting blocked because you're making too many requests, or the tool you're using might flag that you're kind of using an automation, which happens with Playwright, for example. So the Playwright is generally for testing, so it tells Chrome that it's being automated, and that tells the website in turn. So yeah, bot detection can be a real challenge, and open source libraries only get you so far. So yeah, and as well, integrating proxies can be a challenge if you want to use them. And the best thing about Gaffa is that we've integrated AI out of the box, and we handle all the infrastructure for you. So you simply send a post request to us with the URL and a list of actions, and we carry them out on a real browser for you. Okay. Before I do a product walkthrough, I'll see if there are any questions at this stage. Yeah, I've noticed most scraping tools use, yeah, there we go. I've noticed most scraping tools use Python. Is JavaScript not an efficient tool for this? I think, yeah, you can do scraping in Node, but I think most of the tools for scraping are built for Python. There's definitely versions for Node and JavaScript, but I think it's just that most people who work with scraping also do kind of maybe data science, and that also favors kind of, if you want to do analysis, then there's lots of Python libraries as well. So yeah. How do we handle dynamic websites? So that's one area where AI comes in really useful. So I can show an example later on where we're doing this, but essentially the job scraper that I mentioned, there's multiple types of job board run by different companies. So we use the AI kind of parsing feature to be able to kind of extract the salary information from all these different job boards without specifying what the job board looked like ahead of time. So I think it's about time I did a demo rather than talking so much. So let me jump into the Gaffa site. So I'm going to be using the dev environment for now, but the website is gaffa.dev. So after signing in, you go to the dashboard, and there's a section for you to create API keys, which you'll need to see logs of your requests. But the most interesting thing is the API playground. So here you can kind of make Gaffa browser requests, which are kind of how I describe this kind of API request, which carries out your automation on a real browser and returns you the result. So in the playground, when you load it up, you can see several examples. We've got kind of printing an HTML report to PDF, exporting an article to Markdown, and some others as well. So you can set various settings on the request. It's got your API key, and then you can configure the actions. So there are various types of actions here, and you can add them very simply. So this one is, yeah, printing a report to HTML PDF, but let's do the fill out a form and wait for success. In this one, you notice, but there's also the option to record the request, so you get video of it as well. So we've got the URL. If we wanted to use proxies, we could add a location here. So you can select from one of our available locations, and your request will be routed through there. So if you were looking to scrape a booking website or something like that, where you wanted it to be a certain country, wanted to be US only, for example, then you could do this. You can set it to be async or not. So you send the request and then wait for the response, but you can set it kind of in a fire and forget, well, not fire and forget, but fire and then come back later and check it. So there's also the cache. So if you send a request that is the same as someone else's in this time window that you can define, will return their previously scraped result. Because one thing we noticed that basically lots of people on platforms like this are kind of scraping the same pages, which is obviously slow and costly, and it puts the websites under too much strain or unnecessary strain. So you can add this and it will return a cached result. And there's some other stuff which I won't go into now, but the key thing is these settings and then actions. So we're telling it to wait. At this point, the AI selector stuff isn't quite ready, but in this case, we're using CSS selectors. So we're selling it with the ID of email or the CSS class of email to find this item, wait for it to appear, and then type in another field and another field, and then at the end, click a button that says submit and wait for the dialog to appear with a timeout of 5 seconds. So we'll send the request and then wait for the result. Because it's filming and filling out form, it will be a bit slower. I can quickly, while this is going on, I can show you the demo site. So we created a demo site that has various scraping scenarios on it to allow you to test the tool. So we created kind of a hosted PDF that you can use to extract. We'll come back to that later on. It has a printable table. You can define how many rows it has. And then kind of, a mock article, for example, that you can use as well. So this is a way for people to kind of test how the API works without incurring any costs. So this should have come back now. Great. So we've got the response. You can see each of our actions has succeeded. And at the end, we get video. So it's only 2 seconds long. So that hasn't worked properly. The demo effect strikes again, but it has done the automation. It's just that the video is too short. So yeah, it types in waits for success. Done. And you can also capture screenshots and all those kind of things. So if we go to the documentation, which is gaffa.dev/docs, you'll be able to see the full range of actions that we offer. So capturing cookies, capturing the raw HTML of the page, screenshots. You can get the HTML of particular elements, capturing a snapshot of the page, which makes a fully kind of static, it embeds all of the data in the HTML file, so it doesn't rely on any third kind of connections to hosted images and those kind of things. So it's kind of an offline snapshot. Clicking, downloading files, all these things, and parse JSON will come to in a bit, which allows you to kind of export structured data from a web page. So yeah, have a look at the docs. There's some API reference here. We've got some other endpoints as well in terms of extracting sitemap information. So you can extract kind of every link that's mentioned in a sitemap, and then that can be integrated into your programs as well. Okay. So next, a demo. So this is an example of scraping a web page and asking questions of it using AI. So there is a link to the Google Colab or the Jupyter notebooks that I've created for this. So feel free to follow and give it a try yourself with a Gaffa API key. I have set up a Google Colab with my Gaffa API key already and an OpenAI key. So the first thing we want to do is obviously install requests on OpenAI, because we'll be making web HTTP requests and we'll be using the OpenAI API. Then we need to save or bring into memory our Gaffa and OpenAPI keys, which we've set up in the secrets section. And then the Gaffa part of this is making a request which waits for the content to load. This will be a Wikipedia page that we'll do this with, and then generates Markdown from it. So we take the page and then extract Markdown from that, which strips out a lot of the HTML styling and everything we don't need, and we'll pass that Markdown directly then to OpenAI, and the model will then be able to read the content of the page. So obviously images will be stripped out, so any questions about images won't work. But yeah, that's the kind of most common way of kind of taking web content and ingesting it into large language model currently. You can use images, but I found that Markdown is really effective. So here we're just simply creating a browser request like we have done in Playground, and then we send the request and get the result. So let's do that. And then we're going to call the method we've created, the fetch Markdown with Gaffa, from the next section. And so we've got the Wikipedia page on artificial intelligence. And we're going to print the first 5,000 characters. So if we send that off, that will perform that action for us. I'm going to go to the request logs of my account, where I'll be able to see the request having been completed, so what I sent and the data I got back, which is here. So yeah, it's passed the page to Markdown. We're doing some work internally to remove some unnecessary information that you might want to strip out, like headers and footers and those kind of things. But for now, that's how it is. And it has come back in the form of a full Markdown file you can use. So in the logs, you'll be able to see the request here, and then the body of the response. So it's performed the actions, and we've then gone in the actions and selected the action with output. You can also submit a custom ID here as well, so that you can kind of keep track on it. If you kind of know that you've got multiple kind of actions and you want kind of, there's a particular output action that should generate something, then you can track that here and then automatically find that in your code. So, so we've done that. So we've got the Markdown. That's in a nice easy format that our AI model can pass. So very simply, we're going to add some code for OpenAI to with a very simple prompt, and then we'll put the Markdown content and question in the user prompt that we send. Answer as clearly as possible. We can say to it, quote the article directly and indicate when the answer isn't present, for example, as well. That's a kind of nice instruction. Let's add that here. And then we can use this after we run it. So yeah, quote the article shared directly, what is artificial intelligence and what are its main goals. So we've already got the Markdown in memory, and then we run this. We'll call the OpenAI API, hopefully return its result. There we go. So question and answer based on what's on the page. So we asked it to indicate when an answer wasn't present. So if we ask it something completely irrelevant, like what is organic agriculture and what are its main goals, it should tell us that it's not present. Obviously, you've probably used OpenAI before. So yeah, there we go, not provided with the content. So yeah, that's a very basic example. We're just using Gaffa here to provide like a really reliable API that extracts any web page and returns you it in Markdown without you having to have to see the web page and set it up beforehand. We are waiting for a selector here. So this is kind of Wikipedia specific, but you can add generic selector. So if you're only scraping articles, you can add an article selector or the body, or you can just add a simple time wait as well. So that's the first demo. I'll take a minute to see if there are any questions about that. There's one here about just like images, can we scrape video as well? At the moment, there's no scraping video functionality, unfortunately, but I'd like to have that. So, okay, on to the second demo, which is extracting structured data with Gaffa's parse JSON action. So this is one thing that we're really excited about, which is the ability to take a web page and use AI behind the scenes to extract structured data from it. So let me reset this, start again. Okay. There we go. Okay, we start again. So the pass JSON action, I'll explain a little bit more about that right now. So essentially, you define a data schema that you want the output to look like. So you can give it a description, telling the model exactly what you're looking at, and then you can set various fields, which can be simple types like strings or numbers, or complex types like objects, and then in them you can have other nested things, for example. So here's one example, which is extracting product details from an e-commerce page, where we've got the string as a product name, the price as a decimal, Boolean, whether it's in stock or not, and then we've also got things about product rating, average rating score, and number of reviews. And each particular item has its own kind of mini prompt, for example. So kind of you can change the description to kind of specify something a bit more particular about that single piece of information. So, for example, one thing we saw with the salary information for the client was that they wanted the format to not have any decimals. So 20,000 was 20,000, but without a comma and without any zeros after it. So times by 100. I think that's how it worked. Yeah. And so we specified that here, and it said we want the price in this format, and it was able to do that as well. So you can be really kind of really strict about kind of what you're looking for, which is something that kind of other APIs exist that do similar, but they don't allow you to specify in quite so much detail the information you want. So you can send that with information about the model it uses. At the moment, we only offer one. So, but later on, there'll be the ability to use cheaper or more expensive models. You can specify a cap to ensure you don't get charged too much if it's going to be a really long document. And you can also do it for PDFs, which I'll show you as well. So let me lost notes. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Right. So again, we're going to store requests. So we need that to send the Gaffa request and the API keys. Then we want to include the schema and define it. So for this example, we're going to still be using the Wikipedia page. And at the moment, let's not make this too specific on Wikipedia, on Python, but we've told it here we're looking to extract the key information about the Python programming language from its Wikipedia page. We defined the title, the person or creator of Python, the year it was released, a summary, all of these information. So you can see there's a combination of simple fields and complex ones. So this list is an array of strings, and we simply send that with the URL of the Wikipedia page. So now we need to call this function. Again, a reminder, you can view all the code on the Gaffa Python examples GitHub page. So, yep, behind the scenes, what's happening is Gaffa's loading up the website, doing the markdown step that we did previously, and then packaging that up and sending it to the model with the schema. And then it double checks that the schema returned by the model matches, because sometimes it decides to kind of add fields if you don't double check that. So that's something we do. Okay, that's done. And if we print the response, then we get the full response. So you can see you've got your JSON here with the title, the creator, the first year it's released, and all of the key features that is extracted from the article. And you can then go back if it's not quite right. You can go back and change the prompt. You can change each description for each field, and have a play with it until you get what you're happy with. So what we can also do is, let me show you how just adding a field works. So let's add this question. But why is it called Python? Send it. And then I'll just set up the next step while that runs, which is that this also works on PDFs, online PDFs. So don't let that. Taking a while. Sorry about that. So it also works on online PDFs. So we've got a hosted academic paper on the demo site. I believe for this example, we're using a reasoning about action and change, which is a famous AI paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to extract the title and the summary and then the author information with their university affiliation and the location. So this is one thing that would take ages to do without Gaffa and AI, but the large language model is really easily able to do that. And if you were to do it manually, kind of every academic paper has a slightly different format. It uses a slightly different, different style behind the scenes. So it's non-standardized. So how's this run now? Yeah, what question for last video? Why is the language called Python? Name origin, there we go. The name Python is inspired by the British comedy group Monty Python. Perfect. So let's extract information from this PDF. We'll run this, and then we're going to call our action reasoning about change PDF. And it will load up the PDF. Again, it converts it into Markdown and then sends it to the model. So at the moment, it's a little slow. We're working to improve that. Are there any questions that have come in? Nope. Okay, so it has returned the data. So yeah, title, abstract, and the author names with their affiliations. There we go. There we go. So that's turned unstructured data into structured data. So we could also change something to see how it works. So for example, if we're putting countries into our database, the model is likely to use the country that's listed in the document, which people might have formatted it differently. So for example, it might say United States of America or USA or just US. So we can change the data format to match, to kind of use an ISO code instead. So the model has the knowledge of all the ISO codes and how they map to countries. So we can say, use the 2-letter ISO code, alpha 2 country code of the institution. So save that and then call the API again. And it should use our new instruction and return us the 2-letter ISO code. So in the logs, we'll see the previous request we've made. See the format you get back. Yeah, let's see if it's done. There we go. And all these people are from France, so it's used the code FR. So that's a nice standardized format that we can add to our database, and less likely to have all the fluctuations that happen when someone's typing in a bit of data. So there we go. So I have got another demo, but I think we're running a bit short on time, and I want to get to the QA section if there's any questions. So there's another example in the GitHub repository, which is about scraping images from a site. So we had a client come to us that wanted to scrape one of their clients' websites so they could collect all the images in order to use that in some of their materials. So we used Gaffa to do that naturally, and for that we used the sitemap request. So we used the mapping request to extract all the pages, and then from each page we would go in, extract the images from that using Beautiful Soup and Python, and then download them using Gaffa. So there's some MLH challenges that are currently running for Gaffa. So the most basic one is obviously signing up, and we've got a free credit code, MLH credits, which gives you $20 worth of free credits. So you can take advantage of that by going to billing. You have the payment plans and credits, and then buying now, and then enter the discount code, and the $20 will become 0. So that can only be used once. But yeah, if you need more, reach out to me, and I'll see if I can provide some more. Then sending your first request in the playground, signing up to a newsletter at the bottom of a page that we've created specifically for this. So the demo site has sorry about this. So we've created this dummy page that you can run a Gaffa browser request against, and you can create an action to wait for it to load, and then keep scrolling down the page, entering your email and submitting the button, and you get subscribed to our newsletter. And we've helpfully put the IDs that you can use up there. And then the final one is doing something similar to what I shared, extracting the summary, title, and author of the Gaffa blog post. So yeah, have fun, enjoy it, and I'm happy to answer any questions after this. And also, if you have any trouble with Gaffa, then reach out to us on support, and we'll get around to fixing the problem or help you out as soon as we can. So what could you build with Gaffa? So I wanted to do a bit of dog fooding and use my own product. So here is an example that uses a screen called Terminal. So it's kind of like a desk e-ink screen that sits on your desk and kind of passively shows you information throughout the day, whether that's kind of your calendar, the weather. I made a Gaffa plugin, which allows you to give it a web page, probably a news site, and extract the top 5 news stories from the page and display it on the terminal screen. And with the ability to add a prompt to customize it. So rather than just choosing the top 5 that appear kind of logically on the page, this one says, give me the top 5 news stories in Dutch, and these aren't in Dutch. Sorry about that. But it will change the language if you'd like. And you can also say, like, if you really don't like a football team and you never want to see a news story about them, then you can say, please don't show me any stories about this. And that will then filter, and it will select the news stories that are most relevant to your interests, which is really cool. And it's using Gaffa behind the scenes. So that's really fun thing to work on and very simple to do actually, with the parse JSON API that I've mentioned. So, oh yeah, stuff that you could build. The world is your oyster. So anything you can think interested to see. It could be like tracking sports teams or aggregating job boards for junior roles, perhaps, or tracking prices of a particular item that you'd like across different websites. Keen to see what you can build. So yeah, any questions? I'm happy to answer them, and a reminder about the credits as well.
All right. Thank you, James. We've got a question here from Sorakivsky. What about the invisible UI buttons, but which are in scripts and just to prevent AI from sending forms and auto scraping? Isn't it canceling AI scraping idea? I'm not too sure. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a little bit more. Have a little bit more context.
Yeah, it kind of alludes to the fact there's kind of a cat and mouse game between people doing scraping and people who are either running services that don't want to be scraped or kind of want to restrict scraping. And it's an interesting time to be, because you've got companies, for example, Amazon, that really want to prevent people scraping pricing data, even though it's kind of very common. But at the same time, they got in trouble for scraping Shopify. So yeah, it is kind of a bit of a cat and mouse game. But the key point is that kind of often scraping does throw up some interesting scenarios that you have to deal with. But there's a lot of interest in the space, and it's definitely not stopping that kind of scraping. It's making it harder, but if you're doing responsible scraping, then that's fine.
For sure. Sounds good. We have another question from K75932. Do we need to specify timeouts based on what the user scrapes? The speed of scraping has been a pain point for me with other products.
Yeah, I think I know what they're alluding to. So yeah, when you're saying what the user scrapes, so if you're running a third-party tool, then it is a good idea to put limits in place for your customers to stop people kind of hammering your service and hammering a third-party service at the end of the day. Speed of scraping, yeah, there's always going to be a balance between kind of the tools you're using and the speed with which you can do it. So there are companies out there that, for example, there's one French one which scrapes retailers, supermarkets in France, to judge where different products rank when you search different terms, and they're scraping millions and millions of products per day. But there's a huge company with their whole business around that. So they were saying that kind of sometimes they get blocked, and it takes kind of a few days to work out an engineering solution for that. So you need to see basically what the limits are, and again, kind of, treat the site responsibly. So yeah, don't kind of absolutely hammer the website for very little value, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a good answer.
I'm sure it sounds good. We will probably get an update or a follow up if there. Yeah. And here's the last one. This is from someone that joined the stream a little bit late. Hager BM is asking, how would scraping work for doing comparison product listings across competitors? What would the Gaffa limitation be in that case?
I guess Gaffa would handle a lot of the complexity for you. Probably the limitation might be if you're scraping lots of product listings, then the limitation could be cost, in the terms of Gaffa's a little more expensive than some of the other tools, because it handles a lot of stuff for you, and it's a small business, so we can't afford to kind of offer kind of huge amounts of usage at very low cost at the moment. So that would probably be a limitation. Yeah.
Gotcha. And this is the last one. I'm not sure if this one makes sense here, but does Gaffa engineer tunneling also? I'm assuming, like, websites that are tunneled using some sort of like third party service? Um,
I'm not really sure. I'll say probably no, because I don't really understand the question. We do manage the proxies behind the scenes, so Gaffa uses proxies from various providers and tunnels traffic to them, and then kind of to the target website. But I don't know if that is what they meant.
Okay. Well, Rocco Zant, hopefully that answered your question. If not, please feel free to reach out to us here or on Discord. And I did want to update the question from K7. Looks like you answered the question well. And looks like they will be mindful for the websites they scraping. Yeah, always a good thing when you're imparting good practices during a live workshop here. So good on you for that. Let me see if there's any other questions here. It looks like we've covered them all. Um, yeah, I mean, thanks so much, James, for joining today. Really appreciate it. This is like fascinating stuff. And right after this, we're gonna kind of walk through how to answer some of the challenges or submit to some of the challenges, the Gaffa ones included. I guess before we break, I was just wondering if there was anything else you wanted to mention or to address the crowd with.
No, apart from to say that kind of, yeah, I'm keen to support people early in their career and that want to build interesting things. That's what I did when I was starting out. So yeah, if there's something interesting that might be cost prohibitive to build with Gaffa for you, then maybe we can work something out. And I'm always keen to present case studies and share those widely with Gaffa's audience. So in that sense, kind of, I'm open to collaboration ideas, and yeah, that's basically, yeah. I'm looking forward to see what people build.
That's wonderful to hear. You heard it here, folks. If you need any additional support, reach out. Definitely check us out on Discord and keep it locked for the next couple of workshops that are coming up as well. Thank you once again, James, founder of Gaffa, web scraper extraordinaire, and web browser automator expert. If you want to find us, make sure you reach out to us via Discord. Don't forget to check in on the link at the top left corner of the screen. And for now, that's it. Really appreciate y'all sticking around and hope to see y'all soon. All right.
Thanks very much.
Bye, folks.